Hi everybody, it's Ron again. Today we're going to do what I call a steep deep dive into spins. We've all done deep dives into topics before, but in this case we're going to go beyond the textbook definition of this flight maneuver and hopefully understand it a little better. I know it took me quite a while to really be able to visualize what was happening to an airplane in a spin, even after I've done my spin training. So let's get started. One of the first things we're going to take a look at, of course, is the Airplane Flying Handbook. It's the official FAA reference for flight maneuvers and basically how to fly an airplane. And it's a fantastic reference. Right here we're looking at Chapter 5 on upset training. And it gives you a really great diagram of what occurs to an aircraft. But it's a whole lot to take in. So we're going to take a look at a few other resources. One of my favorites is a website called The Bold Method. A flight instructor recommended it to me, and they actually have 5 or 6 articles that they focus on spins and various aspects of it, how to recover, whether you should get spin training, things of that nature. But I really like their drawings. I think it really gives you a good visualization of it. And then we're going to look at a physics demonstration of a spin that's really interesting. So we're going to start out, this is showing a left spin. A spin, the textbook definition that we're going to go beyond, is an aggravated stall condition, according to the Flying Handbook, where one wing is more stalled than the other. Now, the less stalled wing, as you can see here, produces more lift than the more stalled wing. And, of course, that causes the airplane to start to rotate. Now, here it shows more lift, less lift, a little rotation. It shows a spin entry to the left, which is the most common because of left turning tendency, torque, etc. Then, of course, there's another contributing factor to the yawing moment where it starts to spin. There's more drag on the more stalled wing. So it's producing less lift and more drag. Now, why does that happen? Why do we get one wing that's more stalled than another? The pilot isn't flying the airplane for whatever reason in a coordinated manner. Here's a turn coordinator. It shows that the ball is on the outside of the turn. The tail is on the outside of the turn, and I really like this diagram. This is the flight path of the aircraft, and it's obviously not aligned with the oncoming wind. The up aileron, of course, creates a lower angle of attack. Little review. A stall occurs when the wing is encountering the air at an angle that is greater than the critical angle of attack. So if the wind is coming at this angle and the wing is, say, at 16 degrees from that, the critical angle of attack is 15 degrees, then the wing is stalled. So the stall occurs when the wing exceeds the critical angle of attack. So an up aileron, of course, changes the shape of the wing, lowering the angle of attack, meaning this one's not going to stall as much. The down aileron increases the angle of attack. All right. When you increase the angle of attack, of course, it causes more lift and more drag and puts it closer to stall. So if you stall in this condition, this wing is going to stall and drop, and you're going to end up in a spin. Here's what the skidding turn looks like from the overhead angle. The relative wind, of course, is directly encountering this wing, producing more lift, less of an angle of attack. And, of course, this one has span-wise flow to the outside, creating less lift. And part of that lift is blocked by the fuselage in this case, right? Because the wind is coming along here, and the wind at the root of the wing is being blocked. And of course, here's the blanking effect showing that this wind is being blocked from the root of the wind. Unlike the skidding turn that we discussed before, this is a diagram of a slipping turn where the tail is inside the turn. The down aileron creates a higher angle of attack like before. The up aileron creates a lower angle of attack. And of course, the blanking of the wing, the root of the wing, happens on this side. Now, in this case, it's the upper wing that's going to stall. So as the aircraft stalls, that wing is going to drop and decrease the angle of attack, typically causing a more gentle recovery. The dropping of the wing takes away some of the factors that caused the stall to begin with. It also gives a pilot a little more time to react to it than it does when a lower wing goes ahead and stalls. So this is a less critical kind of situation. Slips aren't as dangerous as skids. Here we're going to watch the spin entry. The airplane starts to increase its angle of attack, and we can see the lift starts going away as it begins to stall. It's not coordinated. And when it starts rolling, that's what we call the incipient phase. Now let's take a look at the vectors drawn so that we can visualize the physics, the forces that are acting on the airplane. At this point, we're only showing lift on this wingtip. The rest of it is just pretty much pure drag. There's very little lift at these points. So the airplane is stalled, and you've got some lift and drag on the tail surface, depending on how the wind is hitting it. But the airplane is not flying. The lift here is causing it to spin. It's already done, roughly one spin at that point. There's quite a bit of drag here. You can see the horizontal lines here representing the amount of drag. So this is what they call the incipient phase again. And it is the area between the point at which the airplane begins to stall, but it's really kind of getting its inertial forces and its aerodynamic forces stabilized. So the incipient phase. And it starts to get settled in. And that is the developed phase of the spin. It's basically at 1G. If you look up in the left, you see that it's not going as fast as you might think. It's doing roughly 60 knots indicated. The drag vectors are different depending on where the wings are, the angles there. And down it goes, roughly 500 feet per rotation. It's descending at about 7,000 feet per minute, and there's the recovery. So we have the entry, the incipient phase, where it's getting itself stabilized in the spin, fully developed phase, and the recovery. Now, a few things about spins. This is a Cessna 172. First off, it is certified for spins under certain conditions. Now, I'm going to go ahead and say that unless you're using a flight simulator to simulate it, do not attempt this maneuver. All right, there are many conditions, we're not going to go into them today, that can affect whether or not you can get into the spin, whether or not you can recover from the spin. Some aircraft are placarded against spins at all. For example, the Piper Cherokee, a common training aircraft, spins are prohibited. So if you decide that you want to experience this, that's great, but get yourself an instructor. Not just any instructor, but an instructor that specializes in this. I have been through my spin training, my upset and recovery training, done some aerobatics, and I would not do this myself without an instructor that does it on a regular basis. It's just not a prudent thing to do. So don't try this at home or in an aircraft, unless you're in a simulator. Before we go any further, I want to give a shout out to Austin Meyer, the creator of X-Plane and the sole mad scientist behind the physics engine that allows us to see this. He created X-Plane with its blade element theory and came up with the display flight model setup that you saw in that spin video. That's also his video on his YouTube channel. He gave me permission to use it, so thanks a lot, Austin. You've done great things for the community. What we have here in this next video is our Civil Air Patrol 172 G1000 training aircraft, and we're going to get it set up to do a test of our own. Now, I don't do it as well as Austin did. My demonstration, and this is kind of my first shot at it, and a different model. This is the 172 from Airfoil Labs, which is a phenomenal flight model. I didn't do as well as he did. The outcome wasn't quite as good. But it's interesting, and there are things to be learned from. The beauty of simulation is that you can learn from your mistakes without getting yourself hurt or killed. So, let's take a look at this. Here's our 172. You might notice that it's chock full of people. Now, let's talk about that. One of the things that dictates whether or not you can spin an airplane safely is how it's balanced. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at our weight and balance of the airplane. And of course, it's going to look very similar to the way it does in the pilot's operating handbook. You've got your graph here. It shows us in the normal category at gross weight and zero fuel weight. And of course, we got to remove some folks to get us into the utility category, where it's determined to be safe to spin this airplane. Now, one of the really cool things about this simulator is that you can move the center of gravity and gross weight of the airplane around and do this over and over again and figure out what the impact of the weight and balance is on the flight characteristics of stalls and spins. So if you want to find out what happens if you don't do this correctly and you do it with 3 of your closest friends on board, you're going to find out, as I did when I did a few of these demonstrations, that it's very difficult and sometimes impossible to recover from the spin. In many cases, this is a maneuver that is incredibly sensitive to weight and balance, your gross weight and where that center of gravity is in relation to the center of pressure on the airplane, right? So if you get an opportunity to fly a simulator like this or mine, feel free to experiment. This is an aerodynamics laboratory. Little squirrely, I'm using a joystick here, not my regular rudder pedals. As you can see, it's a fairly faithful representation. We're taking off from runway 24 at Palomar. Kind of looks like it, and it's a good representation of the inside of the cockpit of our training aircraft, including the angle of attack indicator. Okay, rather than wait for a Cessna 172 to climb up to the service ceiling of the airplane, which is about 14,500 feet, we're going to go ahead and use the instructor station here and kind of teleport ourselves up there. We're going to cheat. And we hit enter, and we're up there. And here we are, headed out to the Pacific. I will be turning on our flight model demonstration effects. As you can see, we've got all kinds of data here, telemetric data, which is really useful. Indicated airspeed, true airspeed, equivalent airspeed, which is airspeed with no errors. And the third one, and boom, we're there. And we'll set up our shot. As you see, we're not in coordinated flight right now. The drag is a little sideways. I think I have autopilot on, but no rudder input. And we're headed out to sea like Maverick and Goose. There's a good vantage point. Let's see how Ron does with the demonstration here. As you can see, we got a lot of lift, a little bit of drag at the top of the green lines. And up we go. I'm not going to compensate with any kind of rudder. And the spin begins. And we get lift on the right side of the airplane. It's spinning to the left. And that's what it looks like from the cockpit. It's fully developed. Stall horn is blaring. The angle of attack indicator is showing a full stall. And a release of flight controls. Recover. Not quite the way I should have. Into the sun, can't see much, but unfortunately, if you look at the airspeed, I have gone past VNE and pulled up, and the results are predictable. It bent the wings. Needless to say, I'm not going to show you the ugly results, but I did not land the airplane safely.